Christmas. Baby, please come home. Yeah! Snow's coming down. I'm watching it fall. Lots of people around. Baby, please come home. The church bells in town, they're ringing a song for the happy sound. Baby, please come home. We're singing Deck the Halls, but it's not like Christmas at all. I remember when you were here, all the fun we had last year. Pretty lights on the tree, I'm watching them shine. You should be here with me. Baby, please come home. We're singing Deck the Halls, but it's not like Christmas at all. I remember when you were here, and all the fun we had last year. If there was a way, I'd hold back this tear, but it's Christmas Day. Baby, please come home. Oh, baby, please come home. Baby, please come home. Baby, please come home. Oh, baby, please come home. Baby, please come home.
Whether it's the familiar songs, festive parties, or memories of years gone by, there's something special about the Christmas season, and that makes us long for a place that feels like home. Hey, my name is Eric, and regardless of how far away you feel, or how long you've been gone, or even if you don't know where to start when it comes to faith, you're in the right place. So we're so glad that you're with us today. Now, we'd love to connect with you, and one of the ways in which you can do that is to scan the QR code, which will take you to the digital connection card. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and if it's your first time with us, let us know that, and we'll have a small gift headed your way in the mail this week. All right, one of the reasons we love Christmas time is there's lots of different ways to connect and soak in the holiday spirit, so let's get to that. One is our Spread Some Cheer initiative. It is in full swing, which is one of the ways we love our community at Christmas time. Now, this weekend is return weekend for the Giving Tree. If you've taken a tag, you can bring back those unwrapped gifts by the Cross Point campus anytime this morning or this afternoon between 4 and 7. There's still time to pick up a shopping list and fill a holiday meal box too, or you can simply make an online donation to sponsor a holiday meal box. $70 covers an entire meal for a family. Simply hit the Give button at the top of the page and designate your donation for Spread Cheer. Hey, the Elf movie experience is today. Unless you're watching this on Monday, then it was yesterday. But Sunday, tonight, you're not going to want to miss it. So invite the whole crew, your friends, your neighbors to experience one of the best movies of the Christmas season, Elf, on the big screen here in the venue, along with a few surprises, lots of fun, and sugar. The event is free, doors open at 4:30, and the movie begins at 5. Now, if you're interested in our baby child dedications, whether you have a baby or a child that you'd like to have dedicated, that's happening next weekend, and you can check out this QR code or let us know on your connection card. And last, Christmas Eve is coming to Cross Point. Really, it's coming to the entire world if you look at a calendar. And we want to help you make your plans now to join us for one of our 6 identical services, December 21st, 23rd, and the 24th, or join us for Christmas Eve online beginning December 24th. Now, this is kind of cool. If you're going to be heading out of town for Christmas, we want to invite you to join us for Christmas Eve before you leave on December 21st at 7:30. We're going to be kicking off our Christmas Eve services with a festive after party featuring holiday treats and beverages, plus pictures with Santa. Seriously, he's coming. I know him. He's going to be here December 21st, so plan on making an evening of it and join us for Christmas Eve before you leave. All right, we've got a great service planned for you today, and if you're anything like me, the best laid plans don't always work out, and things don't always go as we hope, as we see in this fantastic scene from the movie Daddy's Home 2.
Oh man, great scene from Daddy's Home 2. Anybody been there? Anybody felt like, you've just had one of those days, maybe even a season where your best laid plans, man, they just do not go the way you expect. Well, if you feel any of that, we're glad you're here tonight. We're going to be talking about that this weekend and how that actually intersects with the Christmas season. So hey, we're excited you're here. Welcome to Cross Point. Christmas is finally here. I'm excited about Christmas being here. The season, man, we get so excited here at Cross Point, and my name's Curt. If you are here for the first time, so excited that you're joining us this weekend, and let's make some noise for those tuning in online this weekend. Man, so excited you're tuning in across our city, our state, our nation. In fact, I got a message this week from one of my friends in Africa that was tuning in a couple weekends ago, so we have people tuning in all over the globe that are joining us in this moment. Now, if you're here for the first time, and perhaps you're going, gosh, I'm not exactly sure why I'm here or tuning in, maybe you got invited by someone, maybe you're just wondering if there's anything in the Christmas story for you, or if God would even be interested in you turning his way. Let me just tell you, if you, again, feel like there's something that hasn't gone perhaps the way you hope, maybe you feel a bit distant, or you feel like you've been gone for a while, let me tell you, the Christmas story is the perfect place to start. So we're glad you're here with us this weekend. Now, just a couple things before we dive in, just to make sure we're all on the same page over the next few weeks. This weekend is Giving Tree Return Weekend. So as you heard earlier, if you have a gift that you haven't returned yet, if you're sitting at home and you're like, man, I took a tag, today is the day. Sunday, December 3rd is when you need to return that. And then in 2 weekends, we're going to be having our Spread Some Cheer meal box return. And so that is an exciting day. If you've never been a part of that weekend, these meal boxes that are coming into this place filled by you and then going out into the community, I tell you what, it's one of the best days that we enjoy around here. Here's a little look at what it's going to look like that day. Excited about Spread Some Cheer. You guys excited about this? I tell you what, I get excited because every box out there has a name attached to it. And so there's still a stack of boxes that need to be filled. So if you're here today, you haven't grabbed your boxes yet, man, take those with you today, bring them back on the 17th. Now, the 17th is also our last normal weekend of services here. After that weekend, we go into Christmas Eve mode. We put all of our resources into Christmas Eve. Again, as you heard, we have 6 identical services. Thursday, the 21st, lots of fun. Santa's going to be here. We're going to have an after party, and then of course we're going to be here the 23rd and the 24th, broadcasting online beginning on the 24th. So lots of fun and lots of engagement, opportunities to invite friends, and then the following weekend we will have no services. The last weekend of the year, we give all of our staff volunteers a rest, so no services the 28th and the 31st. We'll be back at it, get this, in 2024 on January 7th. So lots and lots of ways to connect and invite over these next few weeks. Well, today, we're in full Christmas mode, and we got the sounds of Christmas, we got the music, we got the movies, the feels are starting to come, and there's something about Christmas that makes us want those things. I don't know if you've noticed this. Even the TV shows, the Christmas classics that perhaps you're starting to watch, every single one of them, they lead us to a place where we long for this place of home. We long for this security. We long for this sense of serenity, for hope, for things working out the way that we want them to work. And there's something about Christmas that just does that. In our home, last weekend, in fact, we kind of went all Clark Griswold, and we go right out into the field, and, we find that tree and cut it down with our own bare hands. In fact, here's my family as we were cutting that tree down, and this is one of those moments for us. We had all of our kids home, the ones who were away at college, the ones, of course, that live with us right now, and it was just a great moment, and we get that tree home, and you had Christmas music going, and, we're starting to decorate, and I'm going to be honest with you, by the time we got that tree home, later in the day, and we were starting to get in the mode of decorating, I was not finding myself in the spirit of it. And it was interesting because that's kind of rare for me. It probably had something to do with some of the stuff that I have been just working through personally, professionally, some of the things that have been challenges over the last number of weeks. And I just found myself going, oh my gosh, I'm not in this mode. I'm not thinking about this. I don't know that I want this right now. And then I began to realize that perhaps Christmas is exactly what I need. And I don't have to tell you that, life doesn't always go the way that you plan, and circumstances don't always turn out the way that you want. I think we can all relate to having a plan A and even a plan B, and oftentimes having to, pivot to a plan C. And I've talked to a lot of people over the last, number of weeks, even months, people in the marketplace, people that are business owners going, gosh, I just never thought that this is where I'd be. I never thought that after 20 years in business, I'd be right here. I thought I'd be a lot further along. I've talked to parents that, are in the midst of parenting challenges going, gosh, this isn't at all what I dreamed in this season of our family and our parenting. Students that, perhaps the university level is not exactly going the way that they had anticipated. Even for, a number of us, I know financially, with inflation and with, school loan payments starting back up and just all the things. There's this financial stability that oftentimes I think we step back and go, gosh, this is just not where I thought I would be. In fact, my hunch is that for many of us, we step back from even some of the things going on in our life right now. We say, I don't even know that my life right now is where I thought it would be. In fact, you probably don't know this, but I was supposed to have another vocation as well. Pastoring was not my first thing. I was supposed to have a 20-year career in the NBA, making $25 million a year. Apparently, they weren't into 6-footish guys that are white and can't jump. And so I kind of settled for this. And all kidding aside, I loved basketball growing up. In fact, I grew up in Michigan, and we would chip ice away at the driveway as kids in the middle of winter, so we could go out and play pickup games in the evening. We'd hang lights, so we could play deep into the night. And I'm going to be honest, I was probably way older than I care to admit before I came to the reality that was not going to pan out for me. And yet, the truth is, like you and similar to my life, in a more realistic way, there's many plans also that just haven't come about the way that I've hoped, which is why I always love getting into the Christmas story. Because see, if you're here and you're thinking, gosh, I didn't think this is where I'd be, or I just feel like things have not gone the way that I hoped. If you feel like perhaps life even right now is a bit of a train wreck, I just want you to know that might be the very place that you discover that God does his best work in the midst of what seems like failed plans. And there's no better place to start than at the Christmas story. Because, Christmas is like the season of perpetual hope, right? Season is a season, even back to the first Christmas. The nation of Israel, this chosen people of God, they're hoping, they're waiting. They've been waiting for a long time. Not just like decades. They've been waiting for centuries, in fact, 4 centuries to be exact. And they were beginning to lose hope. And they were beginning to wonder if God was really going to come through on his promises or not. But yet they kept hoping. And I'm just taking a stab in the dark, but I would say that probably many of us find ourselves in that same place as we head into this Christmas season. That we're losing hope. Perhaps the last year hasn't looked exactly the way that we hope. Maybe we had a plan A and we're already settled into plan B or C or even D. And it just feels so uncertain. Well, Mary, the mother of Jesus, she knew a bit about this. And she knew about uncertainty. In fact, if she were here with you and I today, she probably would look at us and she would say, my life as it stood, it was nothing even remotely close to what I had planned.
A girl got pregnant. She was scared. Her parents thought her boyfriend was the father, but the baby wasn't his. He loved her, so he offered to raise the child with her. One evening, her water broke. There wasn't time to get help. He delivered the child and laid him in a manger.
Not exactly the way I think Mary thought it was going to go. And to make matters worse for her, in the first century, ancient culture, virginity was highly honored. And she had maintained the support of her friends and the support of her family, but she still ended up in a plan B. And here she is, a mother out of wedlock, and her only alibi is, hey, it's God's. I mean, think about this, trying to convince your family and friends that this thing that's happening to you, that this birth of this child that all of a sudden you are going to be delivering into the world, that it was conceived by the Holy Spirit. I mean, think about that for a moment. I mean, that is not just scandalous, that's almost blasphemous. I mean, she's got to convince people of this, and you know you're going to be talked about, right? I mean, you know you're going to be the talk of the town. And so this was not plan A for her. In fact, if they would have applied the letter of the law to Mary in that day, I mean, she would have been stoned to death. Clearly not the way that she planned her life and the way she thought it would go. In fact, Mary's plan A probably included marrying a guy that she liked. She didn't even have that opportunity because she would have been in a culture that arranged marriages, so she wouldn't have even got to choose that. She probably would like somebody she could count on, somebody who would create a sense of stability for her as she, began to live the rest of her life. And then all of a sudden, this angel shows up that we find reported in the gospel according to Luke, and he makes this declaration to her. In fact, here's what the angel says. The angel says, God has a surprise for you. You'll become pregnant and give birth to a son and call his name Jesus. Now, just imagine for a moment what this must have felt like for Mary. I mean, God has a surprise for you. She's probably thinking, great. Surprises are fun, right? Surprises are good. I mean, surprises are supposed to be something that actually brings blessing to your life. What do you have? What do you have, angel? And the angel says, well, you're pregnant. And she's like, whoa, wait a second. That doesn't seem like the surprise that I thought it was going to be. I mean, I don't know right now in my current condition that even seems like a good idea. Yeah, and look at how specific the angel gets. Not only are you going to give birth, but you're going to give birth to a son, and here's what his name's going to be. You're going to call him Jesus. And right there in that moment, her plan A was done, it was over, it was thrown out the window, and this new plan was irreversible. And it was far beyond anything she had ever dreamed for her plan A. And of course, when she hears these words, I'm sure she had questions about how Moses, or Joseph, who she was to be married to, was going to respond. She probably wondered if he'd respond, the way any other normal guy would, that she would just divorce, he would divorce her quietly. And apparently Joseph was a good guy, so he did do that quietly, didn't make he wasn't planning to make a big scene about it. But then something happened in his life as well. And he got a visit from the angel. But it left Mary wondering, am I going to be raising this child on my own? Am I going to be out on my own? Am I going to have to fend for myself? Am I going to have to raise a newborn baby in a culture where life was hard in and of itself, let alone raising a baby by yourself? And although Mary was hearing from God, she had this visit from the angel, unlike you and me, she wasn't like reading a script. The book of Luke, this gospel from the writer Luke wasn't written yet. None of this was scripted out. None of this, she didn't know how the story was actually going to come to an end. And so plan B created all kinds of questions for her. It didn't come with a limo and 5-star hotel. In fact, what it came with was a donkey, a long journey, a cave, or better yet, as we learned last weekend, maybe even a birthing room that was in the middle of someone else's living room. And in spite of everything in that moment that she must have been feeling, somehow she responds in a posture that I think surprises probably all of us. She hears from the angel and she says, okay, God, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you. In fact, here's how Luke recorded it in chapter 1, verse 38. Mary said, hey, God, I don't get all this. I don't fully understand what's going on, but I'm your servant and I trust you. May everything that you said come about as true. Now, this is an incredibly courageous response right here. This young, innocent, 13, 14-year-old girl has the ability to respond with this courage beyond anything that she had ever dreamed for her life, saying, okay, God, I don't get this. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know why this is happening, but I trust you. And yet, when we look a little closer at this story, in fact, if we back up just a bit in this story, we begin to see where some of this courage came from. In fact, we begin to see how perhaps Mary was able to move from her dreams of plan A to accepting the realities that maybe God was doing something in her plan B. And my hope for us this weekend as we look at this story, as you think about where your life is, some of the things that for you perhaps have not gone the way that you hope, that perhaps as you wrestle with this, it might help you and I to do the same. And so if we go back just a bit further in this story, all of a sudden we come to this moment where the angel actually appeared to Mary. It says the angel Gabriel appeared to her, being Mary, and said, greetings, you who are highly favored, the Lord is with you. Meaning the Lord isn't just for you. I mean, that's a pretty big thing to think that the Lord is for us. I mean, for some of us, we have a hard time believing that. We think, I don't know that God would be for me. I don't know that God's a big fan of me even showing up in a setting like this. I don't know that God would actually turn his face towards you. No, God is actually for you. Regardless of what's going on in your life, he's for you. He's not just for Mary. And Mary didn't just say yes to anyone. She said yes to the Lord who actually says, hey, I'm with you. I'm with you. And instead of focusing all of her anxiety and all her concern and her questions on the loss that she's feeling because of her hopes and dreams not going the way she planned, she says, God, I don't get this, but I'm going to trust you in the middle of this redirected plan. And in doing so, it not only opens up something remarkable in her, I mean, it actually goes way beyond that. It opens up some extraordinary purpose in her life. In fact, next weekend, we're going to look at how oftentimes these seemingly random events in our lives seem like they're just coincidence, but God actually has a purpose that he's bringing about. Now, as you think about your life, I mean, ask yourself, how would I respond in this moment? I mean, if the moment your plan A begins to get derailed and all of a sudden you're on to plan B and even plan C, like what is your reaction in moments like that? How do you respond when you just literally feel plan A slipping out of your fingers? For some of us right now, I know we're probably not living plan A. I mean, for some of us, if we're honest, we're on plan B or C because of some of the decisions we've made, and we know it. I mean, myself included. Sometimes I'm like, well, I mean, this is where I am. I made this bed. I'm going to have to deal with the consequences. We know that there are certain things in our lives that are just a result of our own actions, and it leaves us feeling like a failure. Perhaps others of us, we feel that perhaps we're just not good enough for plan A. There's just no way God could have a great plan for my life. And whenever this happens, there's a number of things we begin to believe about ourselves. Number one, we begin to believe that these things actually define us. And yet, still others of us, sometimes we've experienced things where someone else or something else actually threw our plan A out the window. Meaning we didn't choose to get, to be born into a family that allowed us to grow up in a setting where our family was ravaged by addiction or affected by abuse. Perhaps you worked hard at your marriage. I mean, you didn't choose, to walk out, but your spouse did. I mean, you do everything possible to live a healthy lifestyle, and yet somehow cancer found its way to your life. So, I mean, oftentimes our plans don't play out the way we hope, and it's not even our fault. And again, in those moments, not only do we sometimes feel like these things define us, but oftentimes we feel like they defeat us. And let's be honest, all we have to do is look around and, you go to the social medias, you look at other people's stories and, TikToks and Instagrams. You're like, man, everybody else seems to be living their plan A. I mean, everybody seems to be having the vacation they want and everything's turning out the way that they want. But you and I both know, I mean, you dig into their lives, you ask them a few questions, you begin to realize that they're probably in plan B, C, D, or E as well. And so when plan A goes out the window, it can define us, it can defeat us. But there's something else that Mary discovers right here. This is what I want us to dig into today. And that's that there's something that we find in the story of Christmas that is God's primary tool whenever we find ourselves in plan B, C, or D, and that is that he tries and works and desires to develop us. And let me tell you something, if you don't hear anything else as a result of your time here today, I mean, if you walk out of here and you forget most of the things we've talked about, I want you to hear this. If you, as you consider perhaps the plan D or E that you're on, I want you to realize these same words that God spoke to Mary through this angel, that he applies to you and to me. These words that say, hey, you are highly favored. I mean, that's what he says to you. He says, hey, you're highly favored. Matt, you're highly favored. He says, Danielle, you're highly favored. Jen, you're highly favored. He says, I just want you to know, man, God turns his face to you. Not only does he favor you, but guess what? He is with you. The Lord is with you. In fact, I just want you to turn to somebody next to you right now. If you're sitting next to somebody, just turn to them and say to them, hey, you are highly favored. Just say those words to him. You are highly favored. The Lord is with you. Just go ahead and say that. If you're tuning in online, you're sitting in a room with somebody, just say that to them. You are highly favored. The Lord is with you. I'm telling you, that is worth the price of admission today right there. When plan A falls apart, it's easy to feel abandoned. It's easy to feel like, man, God must have left me. In fact, he isn't with me at all. In fact, he might even be against me until we discover the story right here of Christmas. And we begin to realize well beyond plan A and even plan B and C that God is still there. And listen, I don't begin to understand or even acknowledge that I know the specifics about your plan B that you might be in, your plan C. I don't begin to understand the challenges you might be experiencing. I don't begin to believe I understand the disappointments and the pain and the heartache, but I want you to hold on to that truth right there, that you are highly favored and the Lord is with you. Because that is actually what will give you the courage to continue to tread into the future. And just like Mary, when you find that plan C or D or E is coming about, you begin to realize perhaps that's the very place that God can give birth to something extraordinary. A couple weeks ago, my wife and I went to a movie, and we're big movie fans, and she did not sell me on this movie from the get-go. She came to me and said, hey, I want to go see this movie, and you're going to hate it. She said, you're going to hate it for a couple reasons. She was absolutely right. And this movie checked all the boxes for me. It's called A Journey to Bethlehem. And anybody seen A Journey to Bethlehem out of curiosity, just so I know? Oh, no way. All right. Listen, this checked all the boxes on the kind of movie I would not go to. Number one, it's a Christian film. I generally am not a fan of movies that come out of Christian production companies. I know it sounds weird as a pastor for you to hear that, but usually they're just very stereotypical. They kind of set this Pollyanna-ish vibe, and they seem unreal and unrelatable. And so I generally just don't enjoy these movies. Number two, it's a musical. And listen, I love Broadway. My wife and I have been to a lot of Broadway shows over the last number of years, but I'm not a fan of musical movies. Like this is like Mamma Mia style, which I know if you like Mamma Mia, I'm sorry. My daughters love that, but I'm just like, this is not how I would enjoy spending an evening. And then on top of that, the third box, the particular evening we were going to the movie had been an incredibly difficult day, wrestling through a number of obstacles, number of challenges. I was distracted. We get to the movie, and I'm like, this is the last place I want to be. And then all of a sudden, as we're sitting there, I begin to realize that perhaps this movie is exactly what I need. In fact, I would highly recommend it. All right, so I went all the way from, let me check all the reasons why I would never go to see this movie, to one that actually intersected some of the things I was feeling and experiencing and brought exactly what I need. Now, it's the story of Christmas. It's the story of Mary and Joseph on this journey to Bethlehem. It's a musical. I'm going to warn you. It's a musical. If you don't like musicals, you still might like this movie. But one of the things that was really cool about this movie is it depicted certain elements of this story. And the director said, hey, we tried to maintain integrity with the actual original Christmas story, but we took some liberties. And I was blown away at some of the tensions that were lifted out, some of the things I'd never considered about how Mary and Joseph had to wrestle through what God was calling them to, as God was changing their lives from their plan A to even a plan B or C down the road for them. How they really, it's easy to look at them and go, man, they just blindly went into this, but this movie depicts that they didn't. There was a lot of tension, a lot of animosity between them. In fact, one of the most powerful moments in the movie was when they were on their way to Bethlehem, and Mary is walking out in front of Joseph, and she turns around and she says to him, Joseph, I'm not the only one who was chosen for this. And I was like, whoa, man. I mean, and you begin to get a sense that the courageous steps they took to trust God into this redirected plan that he had for their lives. I mean, it was no small feat. In fact, I want to show you a scene from this movie. In fact, it's one of the songs. I'm going to warn you. All right, it's one of the songs. I'm going to go against my better judgment. I'm telling you, this song is one that Mary sings. It really captures some of the heart of the tension that she must have felt as she was considering this new direction, this new plan for her life. Take a look at this. Was that not amazing? Oh my gosh. I tell you what, we were watching that in our service run through, and I'm like standing up here in tears. In fact, I would recommend this might be one of your next steps this week. I mean, if you're looking to intersect yourself into the Christmas story, maybe you just need to see, hey, what I'm going through, maybe there is something in the story for me. I'd recommend, going to check this movie out this week. I mean, this line there at the end, give me eyes to see just how I can be the mother to a Savior when I need saving, when I don't feel like I have it together, when things aren't going the way I need them to go. See, Mary, in this moment, I mean, she realized that she had to choose to follow and trust God and plan B and allow it not to define her, not to defeat her. I mean, she had no idea if she knew if she had what it took. But she allowed God to develop her into the person that he was preparing her to be, which was the mother of the Savior of the world. See, I just wonder what God might be birthing in your plan B, C, or D. There's an author by the name of Pete Wilson wrote a book called Plan B, and he says this. He says, your dreams may not be happening and things aren't turning out the way you expected, but that doesn't mean your life is spinning out of control. It just means you're not in control. It just means in those moments you can learn to trust the only one who has ever had control in the first place. I recently had the chance to sit down with one of my absolute favorite people in the whole wide world, a lady by the name of Ann Smith. Some of you had the chance to hear Ann from our platform here. She's 98-year-old sage, a woman of wisdom. I mean, when you sit with Ann, it's like sitting with God. I mean, there's times in my life where I just go spend time with Ann, and she always says things that I write down. I mean, I think she thinks I'm texting. I'm like, no, I'm just taking notes. I just don't want to forget what you said. And she said something in our time together about a week and a half ago. She said, we are a nation of risk takers, but on all the wrong things. We do not risk in relationships. And as I started thinking about that, I started wrestling through that, and I was pondering over that. We're a nation of risk takers, but on all the wrong things. We don't risk on relationships. Why is that? And in one of my journaling sessions last week, I was just, kind of reflecting on my life. I said, why is it sometimes we don't take the risk? Why is it we struggle to trust, especially in relationships with others, but also relationships with our Creator? And, I want to share with you a couple of the things I came up with. I'm sure there's way more reasons than this. These are the 5 things I determined about myself. Perhaps you identify with a few of them. Number 1, I realized that I don't want to get hurt. And sometimes I don't want to get hurt again. So I think there's something natural sometimes that kicks in when something seems risky. And I have to step into something that I don't know how it's going to go, and I don't want to get hurt, and so I don't take a risk. The second thing I discovered is it requires me to look outside of my needs and desires. If I'm honest, I don't always want to do that. I kind of want to look at what I need. I want to look at myself. I want to make sure that things are taken care of in my life. But when I risk in relationships, I have to pay attention to the other. Which leads to the third one. I may not always get my own way. If I'm honest, I kind of like to get my own way. If you're honest, you probably like to get your way too. And so we struggle to risk or invest into trusting. This next one was fascinating. It requires vulnerability. A few weeks, actually about a month and a half ago, my wife, a couple of my daughters, we spent some time in New York City, and one of my daughters had a college visit, and we spent some time just doing New York things. And when I got back, I had somebody come up to me and say, hey, they saw some of our photos on Facebook, and they said, man, how was New York? I mean, were you scared? I mean, why did you do that? Like, why would you spend that time in New York City? I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like one of the most amazing places in the world. Like, yeah, but did you feel unsafe? And I'm like, no. I'm like, I feel more unsafe sometimes in downtown Indianapolis than I do in New York City. And we do all the New York things. We ride the subway. We go to all the boroughs. I mean, we just live in the city. We do the city. And they looked at me like, really? And they're like, yeah, but what about the homelessness? I mean, I wouldn't even be able to look at those people. Like, how do you deal with that? And all of a sudden, I'm realizing where they're going. And I said, well, that's just like a part of the fabric of New York. I mean, the reality is the homeless live among everyone. And it requires you to actually look at yourself and realize your own humanity and how vulnerable we actually are. And it began to help me realize that, when you look at others who perhaps are different than you, perhaps, you realize how privileged you are, how good you have it. And I don't know why somebody living on the street is living there. Maybe it was decisions that they made that affected them. Maybe it was things that was totally outside of their control that put them there. But the reality is and you have to deal with your own vulnerability in those moments. But perhaps the biggest reason that I think we sometimes don't risk in relationships is because we have this fear that we might actually get taken advantage of. In fact, Ann reminded me really of a story that she told me years ago about her husband, Nathan. And Julie and I knew her husband, Nathan, back. We used to go to prison ministry together at Pendleton Reformatory on Friday nights. And Nathan was like one of the most gentle souls I'd ever met. And she talked about a time when they were traveling in their missionary days from the from the West Coast to the East Coast, and they had car trouble somewhere in the plains, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and they had to pull over and get some repairs done on their car. And so they went into a repair shop, and they were given a quote of a couple $100, and it was going to take a couple hours, so they went and had lunch at a restaurant across the street. And they were traveling with another missionary couple. And so when they went back to check on their car, Nathan went in and they told him that they'd had some problems and the price escalated to $1,000. And Nathan just went ahead and paid it. And Anne, as she was talking about this, she said, I was livid. And I kind of pushed back. I'm like, I would love to see Ann Smith livid. I could get livid. I can get worked up about things. But I'm like, I would love to see Ann Smith. If you've ever heard Ann, I'm like, I would love to see what livid looks like for her. She said, I was livid because Nathan got taken advantage of. They knew we didn't have any other option. They knew we needed our car fixed. And so they just ratcheted up the price. And he paid it without questioning anything. And I said, well, Ann, how did you handle that? And she said, well, I looked at him and I said, why did you do that? And he said, well, honey, I feel sorry for him. She said, what do you mean you feel sorry for him? He took advantage of you. He said, well, I feel sorry for him because he's going to have to live with that for the rest of his life. And I'd rather always be on the end of being taken advantage of versus being the one taking advantage of someone else. I'm like, whoa. See, I think Mary and Joseph, I think they probably felt that way. I think they probably felt like, man, our lives have been hijacked. I mean, this isn't at all our plans. I mean, I feel like we're being taken advantage of right here. And so just a couple things, a couple fascinating things happen when we are willing to risk and trust in relationships. Number one, we don't have to spend time and energy hiding any longer. I mean, all of a sudden, when we trust, we can be who we are, and it's okay to be who we are. Number two, we realize it helps free other people up. When we trust, it actually sets an example, a model for others that the same thing can happen in their lives. It's contagious, in fact. And then the third thing is it gives reason to a believable faith, Earlier this week, I called a friend I hadn't talked to in about a year, and he's a guy that I reached out to do some networking on a project, and as he answered the phone, I said, hey, Joe, how's it going? And he hesitated for a moment. He said, well, I'm actually doing, pretty good today. I'm like, oh, dude, what's going on? Like, usually he's, pretty excitable and very joy-filled. And he said, well, about four months ago, I ended up having pancreas cancer. And I've had surgery, and it's been a rough 4 months, and it totally blew us out of the water. We didn't expect anything, just went in for a random checkup, and all of a sudden found out I had cancer. And of course, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And we commiserated a bit on his journey, and my wife had a cancer journey a few years back. And he broke immediately into, Curt, you won't believe all the ways I've seen God's hand in this. I mean, it's been hard. It definitely wasn't what I planned on. And he said, even right after the surgery, I was in the hospital, and I had a moment where I had a chance to actually show God to one of the nurses. And I said, really, what did that look like? And he said, well, as soon as I came out of surgery, I was put in a normal room, and this nurse came in to introduce herself to me, and I just felt like there was something that was off or wrong. And so I said, hey, are you okay? And she said, well, sure, I'm okay. I'm doing just fine. My name's so-and-so, and then she went on her rounds. And he said it was about 2 hours later she came back, and she just bolted into my room, and she said, why did you ask me that question? How did you know? And he said, how did I know what? And she said, well, how did you know that something was wrong? He said, well, I don't know. I mean, there's just something in my spirit that prompted me to ask you that question. And then she went on to share all the things in her life that were not going in the direction that she had planned, and how she had walked away from faith and was struggling to even realize or believe that God was there. And he said, I just looked at her and I said, hey, have you ever heard about the YouVersion Bible app? And she said, no, I've never heard of that. And he said, well, why don't you go download it? It's an app. It's got all kinds of little short studies, devotionals. And, you can pick one that's 2 days long and maybe read it, and maybe it'll be some encouragement to you. And so she said, okay, I'll do that. And she walked out and went on with her shift. He said, a couple days later, he was still in the hospital. She'd been off for a few days. She came back 3 days later and was back on shift, and she visited his room first and said, Joe, I just want you to know, thank you for telling me about YouVersion. It changed my life. He said, really? She said, yeah. I said, I just took your guidance, and I went and found a study on, is God believable? Is he trustworthy? I mean, when life is not going the way that you hope, is he trustworthy? And I've actually began to re-engage in my faith. Again, perhaps for you, maybe this is one of your next steps this week. If you don't have the YouVersion Bible app, I use it every single day. I subscribe to the verse of the day. As soon as I open up, it gives a verse of the day. In fact, I want to tell you one of them that was in this last week's sequence, because it ties directly into what Mary and Joseph are experiencing. In fact, it's called the priestly blessing. It comes from Numbers chapter 6. And these words are from Aaron, who is a high priest in the Old Testament. And he's somebody who's the first high priest over the nation of Israel. And he shares this blessing over this group of people. And I know for us, that seems a little foreign. We're not really used to, like, people in my role giving us blessings, or our parents or spiritual leaders giving us blessings. But words matter. And these were words that God wanted his children to be said over them. In fact, here's how this blessing goes. It says, "May the Lord bless you," meaning may the favor of the Lord be on you, and may he keep you, meaning as you go about your day, may he guard and protect you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. And this implies that when you and I seek his face, when we seek God, I mean, as Mary said in that song a few moments ago, God, I need to see you. I need to see your face, because I don't know that I have what it takes. I need to see you in this. He says, when you seek me, you're going to find me. And may the Lord be gracious to you, meaning may you experience the compassion and the goodness and the mercy of a good, good Heavenly Father. And may he turn his face towards you, meaning, can you picture your Heavenly Father looking at you with great pleasure and joy, smiling just because of who you are? He sees you. And may he give you peace in your difficulty, in your relational struggles, in your career struggles, in the moments when you feel alone, in the moments where you feel like you've lost your fight, in your weariness. And in the midst of this, the crazy thing, in the midst of this, he continues with the same invitation. Will you trust me? With whatever you're faced with today, with whatever plans don't go your way, will you trust me to give you the peace that will transcend any understanding and fill your heart today? See, I don't know what your plan A was. And I don't know if your plan B is even remotely close to what you thought you'd be experiencing. But remember this, Mary is someone who faced the exact same dilemma. I mean, her plan A is crumbling, and yet she trusted, she said yes to the God of the universe, the one who promised to be with her always. And God birthed a baby in her who not only lived and died because he loved you, but because he'd rather die for you than live without you. I mean, that in and of itself, just think about that for a moment. I mean, I've had plenty of plans. I've had lots of plans over the last months and years that have not worked out the way I hoped. And, you know, I've had plans completely crushed. And I can tell you, as I consider all those things, as I sit and reflect pretty regularly, take inventory of my life, I feel like one of the most blessed men on the planet. And it's not because my life is going the way that I necessarily expect it to be going. It's not because I have a picture-perfect family. It's not because I feel financially secure. None of those things. It's because one day I said yes to the one who was born to a teenage girl some 2,000 years ago. Because I said yes to the one whose mother said yes to God when her plan A didn't materialize. And so if you're somebody who feels like your plan A is just sliding out of your reach, man, I just want to encourage you. Would you be willing to just take one step of trusting, just one step of trusting God in the midst of that? I don't know what that step is. I'm going to trust that God's going to put on your heart what that step is. And when you do, just wait to see what he does in developing you. And he might just do something extraordinary, just like he did at the first Christmas. Why don't you stand with me? I want to pray for us. Heavenly Father, thank you for this story of Mary and Joseph, and this teenage girl, this young man, this plan A that did not come about in her life. And yet how she yielded to you. She said, God, even though I don't understand this, even though I don't fully understand everything that's going on, I'm gonna choose to trust you. And in doing so, birth the Savior of the world. Father, I just pray that whatever we're going through, whatever plan we may be on right now, God, that we'd find hope in that we would be reminded that you are always with us, that we're highly favored, so we don't have to let our plans be define us. We don't have to let it discourage us or defeat us. But God, I just pray that you develop us. God, I pray that you do something extraordinary. And potentially even something that reminds us that you're still there. Because this is what began at the first Christmas.
We hope you've been able to experience a bit of the hope and the peace that comes because of what began at Christmas. If you made a choice today to take advantage of the grace that Jesus brings us by taking that step to trust him as your Savior and leader, we'd love to celebrate that with you, so let us know on your connection card. And if you'd like someone to call you and pray with you today, simply text the keyword need prayer to 317-888-5252. 834-7373. And our prayer team will be in touch with you later today to pray with you. And if you're a giver here at Crosspoint, we want to say thank you for your generosity through the Joy Box. And if you're not a giver and you'd like to become one, you can donate at this QR code or through the Give button, and know that your gifts fuel all the goodness that comes out of this place. Thanks so much for joining us again at Crosspoint. We can't wait to see you next time for part 3 of Home for Christmas.